What is going on, casters? Insaiyan Elestrals here, otherwise known as Super Insane 18 on my Yu-Gi-Oh channel, but I just want to welcome you to our first video. I will ask that you excuse the intro for my other channel and the Yu-Gi-Oh map that we are using. I have not gotten around to creating assets for this channel yet, but I didn't want to delay uploading any longer. So with the dropping of the new ban list, it is time to bring you our very first deck profile, and that is going to be Heel Stall, Little Guys, whatever you guys want to call it, and we are going to go ahead and show you guys the build. Now, I do just want to preface this that this is not my deck. This is actually a deck that Bean Soldier TV of the Elestronauts channel coined, and big shout outs to him. Go ahead and check out their channel. He is going to be making an updated video on this as well, I believe, and they did talk about the pre-ban list version of it on their stream last night, but I have updated it for the post-ban list, and I know that his build is going to be slightly different, so again, go ahead and check it out, but let's jump on in. Now, this deck is incredibly strong because it is able to just constantly heal the damage that your opponent is doing to you, as well as heal the damage you potentially do to yourself with some of your activations, as well as expending to draw. And to do that, we are playing an absurd number of essentially Ambrosias on legs. We have 3 copies of Quackle. This is actually probably the better of the healers for one reason and one reason only. As Josh will tell you, or Bean Soldier will tell you, the 3 stat means that this cannot be cryoblasted. So now that Cryoblast is going to be one of the main forms of removal with the hit of Earthquake and Laurels, this card gets even better. We, of course, then have our 3 copies of Sluggle. Just does the exact same thing that the Quackle does. On the cast of this card, you are healing 3 spirits of its respective element. And we do actually also have 2 copies of Dratogla. Dratogla is a way to just kind of do that repeatedly. So you will see when we show you guys the spirit deck that we are maxing out on the, well, not maxing out, but we are playing a majority waters for this reason as well. Then on to some of the removals. Of course, we have our Boombat. This is an honorary removal invoke rune, just being able to cast it and get rid of something threatening. Something that you can also do is you can actually, like, if you stick a Quackle to your field, you can go ahead and ascend into this with multiple Thunder Spirits, pop something, leave it on field, pop something again next turn. Really, really strong. And then an honorary removal, we of course have Eddie, Edward, Eduardo, whatever you want to call this little gremlin here. But he is a pseudo removal in the fact that there are not a lot of Elestrals that have one of their stats higher than 4, meaning that Eddie will be able to change it from either attack to defense or defense to attack and just walk over something relatively easily. So again, not necessarily removal, but honorary removal as well. Then on to some of the consistency pieces. Of course, we are on 3 copies of Ash Rabbit. This is just to dig further into our deck to make sure that we are able to get our heals and our removals. And we are on 3 copies of Ash Rabbit. Now, this is the first change from the previous list that we played. For those of you that don't know, there were 3 of us on this deck for the last app tournament over the weekend. I unfortunately bubbled out at 9th. Tiebreakers didn't quite get me there, but both Chloe and Bean Soldier made it not only to top 4, but Bean Soldier was in the finals as well. And the deck only played 2 of these. Now, I think that 3 is probably correct moving forward, thanks to the new ban list updates that we just got this morning, because now the 3rd Ash Rabbit will be able to Ash Rabbit rather, will be able to recycle those crucial removal elements that you lost with the list. Not just that, but you can also recycle your heal cards as well. Which, speaking of, that is going to do it for the Elestrals. On to the runes. We are, of course, on 3 copies of Ambrosia. The name of the game is Heal, so you gotta play the heal card. We are on 3 copies of Nectar of the Gods. Now, this card is really interesting because it's not only advantage, but it also makes your healing guys live. A lot of times early game, you're not going to summon your healing guys super early because you just don't have the damage that was dealt. Your underworld is not yet filled with spirits. So by being able to activate the Nectar of God, you're both putting yourself ahead on advantage and putting some spirits in the underworld for you to be able to heal. We are on 3 Cryoblast for removal. This does not change from the list, but now we only have our 1 Earthquake and our 1 Resting on Your Laurels. Yeah, not really much to be said. These are just very powerful removal runes, being able to wipe threats off your opponent's board. Definitely a warranted hit, especially Laurels, because Laurels just kind of incentivizes you not to play things like Divine Runes or Stadiums. So yeah, by lowering this count, then we obviously have a little bit more incentive to play those. Now, because we did lose 4 of our removals, and you know that one of those was already replaced with Ash Rabbit, we are replacing the others with more removals. We have our 3 copies of Poison Tipped Arrow as our counter runes, and these are really, really strong. They are almost the same as Earthquake because they are going to cost you 2 spirits to be able to clear something that your opponent has. Maybe more if it's a 2-drop or higher, but more often than not, they're not going to be able to stick a 1-drop to be able to ascend into a 2-drop. So I think that this is a really good sentiment to add into the deck in the place of 2 of the Earthquakes and 1 of the Laurels that we lost. We are on 3 Shield of Achilles. Now, this is really interesting for this deck because a lot of times this is actually your game-winning card. And when Bean Soldier was explaining this to me, I just was kind of like, yeah, I guess that's how it works. But you are going to outpace your opponent more often than not, and there are a lot of endgames where they will use their final spirit to summon a guy, and then swing into a Shield of Achilles, and when you Shield of Achilles return it to their hand, they're on 0 spirits, you pretty much just win the game. So yeah, and then the final card that we are playing is going to be 3 copies of Tsunami. This is kind of a stall card, preventing you from getting big guy beatdowned, as well as giving you additional turns to draw into the cards that you need in order to either heal or remove your opponent's cards. But that is the main deck. It is 40 cards. For those of you that didn't know, 40 is the absolute be-all, end-all. You cannot have more, you cannot have less. So deck profiles moving forward, always going to be 40. Let's show you guys the spirit lineup and the side deck. Now, the spirit lineup is relatively simple. We are on, I believe, 7 of our Leviathan. This is just because water is the one that we can heal the most, so when we are using our runes like Nectar of Gods or Tsunami or whatever, paying the water does make the most sense since we have 3 Sluggle and 2 Jatagua to heal it. Then we are on, I believe I upped it to 6 copies of Zaptor. We were only on 5 of these for the recent app tournament, but I do think that 6 is probably correct moving forward, partially because just like I was running into instances where I'd run out of these and I'd have to like Ambrosia 1 back so that I could summon a Quackle, but also because we are siding a Thunder card that I think is very, very important. Then we are on 3 copies of Vipiro. This was actually upped from 2 because we did put the 3rd rabbit in. Then we have 2 copies of our Teratlus. We did previously have this at 4, but with only 1 Earthquake. You don't really need it. If you ever Ash Rabbit back your Earthquake, you just Amber these back into your Spirit deck, so really straightforward. And then we are on 2 copies of Flurmine, and you might be questioning why not 3, because we have 3 Cryoblasts. But it's essentially the same thing. If we ever have that 3rd Cryoblast and we need it, we just Ambro one of these back, and it works out pretty well. So now let's show you guys the side. Now, the side deck is a little interesting because a lot of the cards that I was siding, mainly the Poison Tipped Arrows, were now delegated to the main deck, so I did have to update the side deck, and while this hasn't been fully tested and is largely theoretical, I do think that it makes a lot of sense, so let's go ahead and go over it. We are on 2 copies of Lumaru. This is good for 2 specific decks. One is going to be the mirror match, because a lot of times the mirror match comes down to who has more cards in their deck. You're both just healing and not really doing much damage to each other. So if you can swing over one of their heal guys, mill them for 3, and if you can do that twice, or however many times you have the Lumaru to swing, then you're probably just going to win based on having a higher deck count anyway. But also, it is a good card handling into Galaxy. Now, Galaxy is a card that this deck struggles a lot with. It is very hard to play around a Galaxy. In fact, that was that was the hardest matchup that I had in the webcam, or in the app tournament. Galaxy just kind of felt like an unwinnable match, so I kind of built the side deck to handle Galaxy, which is why we are on this next card as well, and that is Smoltuga. So Smoltuga is, again, both for the mirror match and anything running Galaxy. Obviously, with Galaxy, its stats will be swapped, meaning that it can just crash with the Galaxy, but not just that, it's really, really strong and potent in the fact that it replaces itself. Being able to search for a Fire Cost Celestial means that you can search your Ash Rabbit, so you're not only getting the body to replace the Smoltuga, but you are also getting the Ash Rabbit, which will recur resources, which is what makes it good into the mirror as well. Recurring those resources means that you'll always be up on your opponent, especially if something like the Lumaru gets outed, you could potentially add it back and just keep milling them. Next up, we are on 2 copies of Arcolith and 1 copy of Lavavolith. Now, Arcolith is really cool because it is a pseudo healer in a sense. For those of you that are unaware, you can cast both Invoke and Counter runes using spirits on your field. So with Arcolith's ability to re-enchant 3 of your Thunder Spirits, those are just additional free activations for something like Nectar of Gods or Laurels or a Poison Tip or a Shield or anything like that. So it is a pseudo heal, but not just that. stat, having a 6 attack stat is very relevant. As you guys saw, this deck is not big on the attacking standpoint, but sometimes, again, especially with something like Galaxy, your opponent puts you on you need to be aggressive, and this is the aggressive card. Same can be said with Lavalith. Lavalith did just go to 1, which is why we are only on 1, where we were previously on 2, but sometimes you just need to be able to summon it, pop a rune, and start going in, and it is really, really good to do that. Especially with these lists, I do expect to see a uptick in the play of something like Chronodile, and this card really gives Chronodile a hard time. Then we are on 3 copies of Gorgon's Gaze. This is just generically good, and again, specifically into Galaxy, being able to make it so that you are able to run over it. We are on 2 copies rather of Dense Fog. This is for the Chronodile matchup, which I believe is the hardest matchup for this deck. Thankfully, I didn't see any of it, but I have playtested against it, and it just feels miserable not being able to remove the Chronodile. So by suppressing it, you can then remove it since it is no longer untargetable. And then finally, we've just got some spirits. We have our 2 Luminate for the Lumaru, and only 1 Owloon, because in theory, you should only ever need to resolve the Dense Fog once, but that's going to do it for the build. And there you guys have it. That is going to be my post-banlist updated Lil Guy's Heal Stall deck profile. Again, this is not my deck. Please make sure to check out Bean Soldier TV and the Elestrals channel. They do make some incredible content, and without them, I would not even have this deck on my radar. So you know the deal. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, share with your friends, and keep in mind that we will be having a lot more videos on this channel. We will be having deck profiles, we'll have discussion videos, maybe we'll even have live gameplay, only time will tell, so make sure you stick around for that. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.